In 2022, I invested more than 100,000 euros in building my dream studio. And after I just finished building it and everything was running, I had to close it down. In this video, I want to share all the lessons that I learned from this process, now sitting here in my other new studio that I built then from 2024 onwards. And I work in here since it is a different studio. It is much more niched to Foley. My dream studio in 2022 that cost more than 100,000 euros was a hybrid room that was designed for both mixing in Dolby Atmos, linear and video games, natively in digital work environment, and also to do Foley in there. And there is a whole video documentary about building this studio. It's available also here on my channel if you want to have a look. Why did I dream of this studio? First, I worked at Ubisoft at that time, and we were about to build a studio for Ubisoft that was also a very huge project. So we had planned a mixing stage, Dolby Atmos home, and a Foley stage, couple of edit suites, everything on the highest level. So I was involved with planning the studio. Somehow the studio really never came. And then I thought I have the opportunity to build a studio in my house where I lived in the basement. Maybe I can also use that studio and rent it out to Ubisoft so that we can mix our games in there. So it was a multi-purpose dream. So I wanted, of course, to be able to recoup the money from the investment. And I was also very much interested in Dolby Atmos, which I still am. Back then, I wanted to really look into Dolby Atmos music mixing because I come from music. In my teens, I already started my first recording studio and I was involved as a rapper in the whole game and tried to make a living out of that, my own music, and then did sound engineering at the side. After a couple of years doing that, I switched then into becoming a professional for audio post-production, and then I ended up being a Foley artist. That is a long story, and there are other videos on my channel that go deeper into that story. I want to share more about that studio and what it taught me to build it. So first of all, it was really nice process to involve so many people. It was not only the company that did all the acoustic planning and then also manufactured all the panels that you still see in my studio here. It was also a studio planner that helped me with the technical setup. It was a company that built in the electricity of that studio. It was other people that were involved in documenting the whole process. And there is already one of the biggest lessons. So if you think about presenting yourself as a studio owner or as a sound professional in general, don't make the mistake that I made, because I invested more than 5,000 euros into documenting the process of building that studio with great people, and the video that came out of it, I think, is also worth more than that. Still, it didn't really help me to push my company and earn more clients or get more clients with that video, I believe, because it had only 2,000 or 3,000 views on YouTube, and that's it. And for that investment, it's really not worth it. It's nice to have that process documented. Have a look there. It's a 40-minute documentary, proper done, well done and well made, and I really am proud of that product. But now doing content for more than 3 years on a daily basis, I know that those high value productions don't really do the trick if you want more connection, more networking, more trust with people. I would rather advise you to think in small chunks of content. Start with something that you are really passionate about. If you see yourself get in front of a camera, then that's a good thing. If not, then try something with written content or make nice infographics or build stuff that is useful for other people and share that with the community. And I think that way you can connect deeply with others. Of course, a long form video is also nice, but there are cheaper ways to produce that than doing a documentary that costs 5,000 euros before you even have a follower in your account. That is something I learned the hard way. Let's go back to the studio. Are you recording sounds at home? And is DIY Foley something that you are passionate about? If yes, then I have some free manuals to build modular surfaces, which I believe are the fundament for everyone who wants to progress from just recording sounds on their desk, let's say, to really record impact sounds and footsteps and stuff like that at your place. And those 3 manuals are the fundament. It's a document that took a long time to develop, and I want to thank Alex to make it happen. So this document is linked in the description. Make sure to download that if you want to start your Foley journey at home. Let's get back to the video. As I mentioned, was intended to be a hybrid room, both for mixing on the highest level in Dolby Atmos home format and all the formats below that, and also to do Foley in there, because that is my core thing that I do and that I also did for Ubisoft. And I never had a proper studio at Ubisoft. I worked out of an 11 square meter phone booth that was not ideal at all. Still, we made it work. And there are also other videos on my channel that explain my methods and how I record in these unideal environments and come to really high quality results. So this studio, it was around 20 square meters and it had a poured concrete floor that was on ground level. There was just ground below and no other basement or whatever. So that was a solid sounding floor, which was great. Of course, the space was limited, but we tried to maximize the space behind the desk so that I can use all that space to perform. As I said, I wanted to dive into Dolby Atmos, maybe to make a side hustle out of mixing immersive music, because I really like and love music and I wanted something to get my hands on it again. And that seemed to be a nice business idea, because I cannot make up 10-15 years that I invested now in post-production and now become a professional music mixer out of nowhere, although I have a couple of years of experience, but that is way back. I thought with the immersive format, that is something new, that is something I am capable of, and that is something I can explore early on, so be one of the first ones who offer that. And 4 years ago, I was an early bird with this, I believe, having my own setup. I never even made it to mix a single song in that studio, because I focused way more on Foley, trying to make a living out of that after I was fired at Ubisoft. So layoffs in game audio are common and they are becoming more common over time. And now we see that the industry is very fluctuating and related to investments and quarterly statements and plannings more than actual, game development, because there's a lot of capital interested in those kind of company structures. So therefore we have huge teams being created and then, headcount going down. So that is something I didn't understand back then, but now I understand it way better. The studio was my kind of safety net, despite the fact that I didn't think that I will be laid off soon. But somehow, as I said, I was kind of understanding that maybe working there forever wasn't my real goal after a couple of years in. I then decided I have to do something to build something on my own, that I can go on my own long term. And having a studio at hand that I can work in and that I can do my craft and get paid for that is something that is a long-term investment, and that was the idea behind it. So there was curiosity about Dolby Atmos and finally getting my hands dirty. There was this business opportunity that I saw with Ubisoft, that they would hire the studio and rent the studio that we can mix in there instead of doing it non-ideally or go to Molinaire and travel all the time for those mixing sessions. Then, of course, there was the Foley side of things, that I can also potentially do a couple of movies in there, although it is not a proper Foley stage. The reality was, after I really became an expert in setting up the digital infrastructure, because it's one thing to have Dolby Atmos enabled in your room with an analog receiver, but it's another thing if you have the whole thing on a digital level and also integrate D and encoding on a digital level, so it never goes back to analog and back to digital. So that avoided is a whole other level in the setup and also in the cost. And I wanted to have that, so I invested in the merging interfaces that run on Ravenna, and also integrating and encoding with a product called Arvus that hooks into the network with Dante. And that was a really tricky part to make that work. I somehow became a little bit of an expert through that process and helped a couple of engineers around the world with their setup. In the end, I never really worked with it, and that was a huge problem. So before you make an huge investment. Get your hands dirty first. That is something I also learned the hard way. I still love Dolby Atmos. I still see myself enjoying the process of mixing in immersive, but somehow I never really tested it on my headphones before I went all in and bought the equipment. Only the gear and the speakers were around 50k. Even if you have access to that kind of money, double check your real motivation behind it, because it's nice to think about something, but then if you don't do it, that's an indicator that maybe the drive is not there. And then I ended up doing Foley in there. I recorded a couple of movies before I had to actually close it down. And then closing that thing down once it was actually working, and I invested more than 1 year into this project, from planning it to building it to then getting it to actually work. It was a long process. And then as life happens, things changed and I had to leave that house and therefore also tear down the whole studio. Was about to find a new place, and I'm thanking God immensely for this place, because it was kind of impossible to find something new. Imagine you have at least 60,000 euros debt. You have no job, just got laid off at Ubisoft. You have no proof that your business is actually operative and brings in money. And then you have to find a new place to live and a new place to rent for a new studio. Really, Allah makes things happen no matter what. And experiencing that the hard way was tough, but it also gave me a big lesson that you should always trust that life will make a way for you, and that anxiety is getting you nowhere. You know, I had anxiety issues back then. I wasn't really sure where I will be living in 3 months and if I can build a new life. But then things happened in my favor, and again, I'm very thankful for that. Thanks for everyone who is here on the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, then please let me ask you that free favor that you can actually help me with. Subscribe now, hit that button, and this would really help me a great deal and also the channel to grow. There are a couple of comments on some of my videos where people said that I thought this video literally has millions of views. So maybe the channel is a bit underrated, and I hope it is. So please help to push it a bit further to get that views and reach more people and get the Foley knowledge out into the world. That's a free thing you can help me to do. Subscribe now. Thanks, and let's get back to the video. Now I'm sitting in this new studio, and this studio was then built with way less budget because I already had my acoustical treatment that I just placed in here with my own kind of understanding. I didn't measure the room. I didn't involve MB Acoustic that planned my first studio to, let's say, measure this room again and then make a plan how to put the panels ideally. Because in this studio, my goal was not to really mix. I simply wanted to do as much Foley in here as possible. There are many reasons for that. That is the one thing that I'm really a trained expert in. So it makes most sense to also focus my business efforts around that. As I did not really go into the Dolby Atmos mixing, it's evident that this is a nice idea, but it really didn't stick with me. Also here, the height of the room is not really ideal for putting Dolby Atmos. And also it would take too much space in the room when I am focusing on Foley and not intend to mix in here. So that were the decisions behind building this room. There was still some building involved. We had to tear down a wall. That was exactly where I'm sitting now. And then we had to put another wall in front of the room because there was just a wooden gate. And then we had to put insulation here so that in the winter season it doesn't get too cold in here. And then we installed my AC from the prior studio and made it work throughout a couple of months. It took from mid-January, I think we started in 2024. And I think in April 2024, I recorded my first cinema movie in here. And yeah, since then, I'm working full time in here, working on movies and games and also creating content for you to, share all my knowledge as the Foley teacher. That is a real pleasure for me to see things now with this different perspective. You don't need 100,000 euros to build your dream studio. If you have it, then please double check your true motivation behind it. Is it just a nice thing to have? Because I ended up demoing the room always with Stranger Things, playing it back natively with Apple TV through the digital pipeline that I built. And it sounded amazing, and it was always like blowing people away. And I love Stranger Things and the sound design and everything behind that. It's really great. And to see also that a script is written with sound in mind, that is really a great thing to have. So I would also love to work on more stuff that goes into that direction. You might know Breaking Bad. That is also a good example, I believe, for scripting with having sound in mind. Because if you think about Breaking Bad, there are so many scenes or places in the whole series where there's so cool objects in the room that produce so unique sounds. So that is a great thing. I just wanted to make this video in order to warn you. Don't think that it's all about the gear and you need to invest a fortune before you can become a pro. Of course, acoustics is very important. You have to know your room. You have to know your speakers or your headphones, whatever you work with. You have to know your craft. So we don't come around practicing things every day. And as I never got my hands dirty with the immersive mixing, what can I say? I'm not an expert here. I admire everyone who does that type of work. I would love to chime in, but it seems that my profession and the thing that I do every day is Foley. And therefore, that is the thing that brings me the money. I got laid off at Ubisoft, but I still work in games. As I was there for 5 years, my passion really evolved, and I still love working on games. And that's why I'm hosting the Game Audio Barbecue that is always on the Saturday of Gamescom. So this year, 2026, is the 29th of August, and I'm inviting everyone who is around Cologne to come to my studio. It's a day here with me and the crew, everyone who is into game audio. It's for free. You're invited. If you want to join, then make sure to contact me either on LinkedIn or Instagram, and I can put you on the WhatsApp group for that event, as I want to keep that very private. So if you're interested in coming here and meeting me and meeting the people involved in game audio, make sure to get in touch with me. I'm happy to have you here on the 29th of August 2026. Now let's get back to the video. If you are on the brink of starting your audio career, then be aware that you have to do things every day and you have to practice. And if you're further on in your career, you already know that. You put in the work, and now it's more about what do you actually want out of your career. Is it employment? Is it freelance? Maybe selling products or educating people? So there are many career paths. And I think nowadays it's very wise to think a little bit out of the box and open up multiple streams of income or potentials. So in my case, I'm focusing not only on the Foley services that I do in my studio, I also teach Foley in my private membership, the Foley Guild. I do live sessions and workshops on site in my own studio and around the world. And I try to help as many people to learn Foley through my channel, The Foley Teacher. And that way also people know me as the Foley teacher, as a working professional who is actually doing the job, not only talking about it. And therefore also clients come my way, luckily, that I might have never got to know if I hadn't that channel. This is something I'm really passionate about, to help people, not only with the Foley skills, but also with this career kind of thinking. So if you're interested in a session with me one-to-one, then feel free to get in touch. We can set that up, and I'm very happy to think inside your world and maybe give you an out-of-the-box idea that might spark something that you have never thought of, that might fit actually what you want to achieve. Thanks for watching that video up until the end. Don't make the mistake of investing too much money if you don't really know what you want. Be aware that the skills come from practice. That's it for now. Enjoy one of the next videos. Peace. The Foley Teacher.